Слухаємо відеозапис лекції Деб Робінс.
Now I would like to remind that we are going to watch the video and listen to the lecture of Deb Robins.
Вона із Австралії.
She is from Australia.
Вона є засновницею і вже 13 років керівниця і веб-майстер першої австралійської благодійної організації.
She is the founder, and for 13 years she has been heading, and she is the webmaster of the first Australian charity organization.
Вона є співорганізаторка національних освітніх конференцій, присвячених нейром'язовим хворобам і кампаній з приводу Всесвітнього дня поширення інформації про хворобу Дюшенна.
She is the co-organizer of the national educational conferences dedicated to the neuromuscular diseases and campaigns dedicated to the World Day of the sharing information about Duchenne disease.
Вона є співорганізаторка кампанії по просування інноваційних технологій вентиляції легень.
She is the co-organizer of the campaigns dedicated to the management of innovative technologies of the lungs ventilation.
Провідна адвокатка першого реєстру нейром'язових захворювань в Австралії.
She is a prominent advocate of the first register of the neuromuscular diseases in Australia.
І нещодавно почала займатися захистом здоров'я споживачів, м'язова дистрофія Дюшенна, охорона здоров'я в сільській місцевості, на віддалених територіях та геноміка, допомога пацієнтам.
And recently she was engaged into the defense of the health of the clients, that is muscular dystrophy, healthcare in rural areas, at the far areas, also genomics and assistance to patients.
Будь ласка, зараз прослухаємо відеозапис її лекції про ті проекти, які відбуваються в Австралії.
So please, we are watching the videos and listening to the lecture about the projects which are taking place in Australia.
Hello, I'm Deborah Robbins. I've been invited by the organisers to talk about a patient's perspective of non-invasive ventilation in Australia. So I've called this a photo album because the photos are going to jog my memory about what I as a parent and what we as a group of advocates have done in Australia over the years. This is my family. Douglas is about 21 here. He has two older brothers, Matthew, Jeffrey, and this is my husband, Jeff Sr. I'm showing you this so that you realise he was actually 23 before he received nocturnal nighttime ventilation. Of course, this is him today on a bus taking us to a rainforest walk together, and he uses SIP mouthpiece diurnal daytime ventilation. As a child, he swam a lot. He was a lovely little boy, one of 3. I included this picture to show you wearing night splints. He wore his night splints nearly to 20 or over 20 years of age, and as a result, he can wear shoes. He has really good feet. I had one win. One battle I won. He slept very soundly and didn't mind wearing night splints. But these images here are about his sleep studies as a child, because we didn't have to advocate for nocturnal ventilation. In our country, when my son was diagnosed in 1993, sleep studies and getting a BiPAP were already established. They didn't want you to die in your sleep. However, they didn't care much about the daytime, and that's where my group, as a director, founder of a charity in Australia, Parent Project Australia, and then Dushenn Foundation, we were involved in different types of advocacy for ventilation. These two images as a child, Douglas travelled to the big centre in the capital city where the biggest population of boys were and where they were treated. This one, when he was 19, we had moved to a regional centre with lots of specialists in their own right, cardiologists, pulmonologists, and so we felt we didn't have to go to the capital where the major clinic was for Dushenn. And we decided to get an annual sleep study done where we lived, in the region. Big mistake, and I'll talk about that in a second. It's really worthwhile talking about Doug's swimming because his breathing was very, very good. He didn't have water wings but flippers, and so with this little tiny movement of his legs he was able to breaststroke until he was about 18 years of age. And swimming and diving was absolutely the best way to expand his lungs, and yeah, really good. He did as a child use this thing. This is a TriFlow, and it's a way to do breathing exercises. And also an amber bag is a way to do lung volume recruitment. So, how is Douglas different to most of the boys and men in Queensland? He was left too long. Because he didn't go to the big centre where the experts knew Dushenn, he was left until he was 23. And I had to see with my own eyes that when he laid back, supine, he couldn't breathe. So he slept sitting up for a couple of months until I could get him back to the capital. They could do a sleep study and provide him with this BiPAP machine here, because these generalist pulmonologists do not know anything about Dushenn. So it's really important you go to the specialist centre. His first mask was this one, a bit like a cricket box. It's a nose-mouth mask. It is called a full face mask actually, so he's always had those, and because of the pressure on the bridge of the nose often, he's had to buy these things, these silicone pillows, diamond shaped pillows, and he can get a couple of nights out of one of these expensive little disposable diamond shaped pillows, and there are probably a couple of dozen in a packet there, but he prefers those. Now lately his wife, he and his wife have found this one he likes for his nocturnal BiPAP, and this has no pressure on the top of the nose, which is wonderful, because finally he has an alternate mask to use to take this pressure off any pressure sores or skin loss of skin integrity there. The nose just rests on this pillow above a mouth mask. Okay, so she's a clever girl. That was wonderful to find this mask for him. One of the reasons why I was so angry about Doug being diagnosed for non-invasive ventilation so late was that he was moody, he was tired, he was fatigued. His arts theatre degree took him 4.5 years instead of just 3 years like everybody else. So I think he would have been able to concentrate, he would have been in a better shape. Another thing that happened to him was he very rapidly, very quickly, within a year, needed daytime ventilation. And if you can control the nighttime ventilation, usually the day will take care of itself for many years. But because Doug didn't receive his BiPAP early enough, he very quickly needed daytime support as well. So I've just summarised those learnings about BiPAP ventilation. Please go to where the experts are and where all the other patients go. They know Dushenn. They know how to read a sleep study report. Don't do like most of the world and forget about the adults and just focus on the pediatric. I think Denmark do it well, Belgium does it well, but the rest of us are really catching up. We haven't established enough dedicated adult clinics and got our act together with adult care as well as we have with pediatrics. Another imperative, ask about everything. Don't just assume that everybody is equal and given the same information. They're not. You know, city people are given different information. You know, you have to really ask. We didn't know that there was a backup battery for his BiPAP machine. Probably for years. We used to get up in a power failure and start a generator. But we were very disappointed to learn that all the city boys knew about backup batteries, but for some reason, even though we went to the same doctors, we weren't told about it. I've talked about the 2 masks. That trifly I showed you can be an exerciser for the lungs, also the amber bag. This is my favorite, swimming and diving, because I've seen myself how Douglas benefited from that. And there are many ways to swim, many ways to skin a cat. You don't need to have a pool. Some children like to blow bubbles. Some children love to learn to sing and do all those singing exercises and breathing exercises. And that all helps with lung volume recruitment. But ventilators can also be a mechanical way to do lung volume recruitment. I have made an aquatic therapy or a hydrotherapy fact sheet from my son's old Montrose Access swimming program, and if you're interested in that, it's online there. Okay, so what was the next ventilator, which wasn't in Australia at all, which my charity, Parent Project Australia and then Dюшенn Foundation had to introduce into the country? And we bought Melbourne Hospital, Sydney Hospital, Brisbane hospitals, their very first Emerson cough assist machines, the original old dial jobs with 1 meter circuit, and we bought them over here with grants and raising funds, and the professionals, the therapists saw how less children died of pneumonia, less hospital admissions, better health from getting over chest infections and pneumonia faster. Over the years they've become digitized, and Philips now make an E70, it's called in this country, model. So, you know, the dials aren't moving, they're easy to operate. And I'll talk about the hybrid IPV Pegaso that Michelle Toussaint recommends, which we're only just starting to learn about now. But this lady here giving Scott cough-assisted treatment, she's Helen Posselt. So she's our gift to the world. Very excellent, experienced therapist looking after 100 families for about 20 years. She has lectured all over the world, made the child muscle weakness diagnosis videos for the CDC, and we sent her out to the world. She brought back things we didn't have and told us about them, and then our charity would advocate for them. So we're very lucky to have her. She was also our conference convener. Always have international speakers. Don't be neo-nationalistic. Don't think you know everything. Because if you bring the experts from overseas, the very, very best, you know, your professionals are learning. They all come in droves to hear Louis Boitano, Michelle Toussaint, Josh Bendit, John Finder, John Bach. These are people, you know, we've got sponsorship for and brought to our conferences. Sometimes 12 overseas speakers at one conference, because we want our specialists to learn the newest and the best. So always be cosmopolitan and international. This is the third and the final type of ventilation we introduced into Queensland. Now, Victoria supplied 2 BiPAPs to their adults, one for the bed, one for the wheelchair. But they always had their full face mask even on in the wheelchair to allow them to go out. So in Queensland, we didn't do that. These boys stayed beside their beds on their 1 BiPAP machine for years. They didn't leave their room once they couldn't breathe during the day. And, you know, they suffered. They lost social contacts, and they couldn't speak to people, and, you know, it was bad for their health. This fellow here, he weighed only 30 kilos when he started. SIP mouthpiece ventilation, and because it can help you to swallow and eat, he gained quite a bit of weight and started to thrive. These brothers went on a cruise, and we met them in Cairns. Doug was probably 10 years younger than them, but he needed to breathe in the daytime because he was left so long without nocturnal ventilation or nighttime ventilation, and he wanted to perform his plays and have the volume to speak and not get fatigued with all his arts meetings and so forth. So here are some learnings about SIP mouthpiece ventilation. We've had a lot of failures and a lot of accidents, so I want to share that with you. Generalists are not as good as our experts, our Dюшенн experts. So, you know, if you're presenting to an emergency room or something goes wrong suddenly, keep your emergency wallet card with, you know, please do not give me oxygen, add it to my amber bag or add it to my ventilator. And, you know, with PJ's protocol, how to deal with adrenal suppression if the patient has been on steroids for a long, long time. So things that we've learned from losing boys, power failure imperatives, like this other fact sheet I have listed some of them, some of the tips, because we had a couple of men pass away during a storm. They lived in the same house together, the carer didn't wake up, and they didn't have backup batteries for their ventilator, their nighttime ventilator. So we decided to do a fact sheet for that. Michelle Toussaint, of course, has given us some very good tips and precautions for things to put in your backpack on your wheelchair with your ventilator, because ventilator failure will happen. It's just a matter of time. And another thing that I particularly experienced in having to fundraise for some of these early ventilators was that some men would say, no, thank you very much. When I can't breathe anymore, I don't want to be like them. I don't want to look like that. I will just die. Well, that is not so when they cannot breathe anymore. If a person is struggling to breathe, they really want to live. And so it's really hard to scramble everybody, distributor, doctors, fundraising, to try and get this at the last minute to help them breathe or to help them swallow. So plan for this thing. It's called a watershed medical moment, and Josh Hendrickson has given us some good information there, and I put them into these, condensed them into these fact sheets and cited his references, because these are difficult conversations you have to have, but they are anticipated even if they are unpredictable. So you have to plan ahead, and I hope those psychological fact sheets can help with that problem. So once we attained once the doctors presented the data, that they gained weight, that they got their lives back, that they could talk better, that they were studying again and going out and volunteering again in the community, the hospitals and government said, yes, you can, we will supply them. So your charity doesn't have to donate them anymore. So that local evidence is so crucial to getting hospitals and government to say, well, we're saving money if we do this preventative thing. We haven't got as many hospitalizations and acute interventions to have to do, yeah, we'll come to the party and we'll fund these things. So this is somebody fishing with their ventilator in a very large protective metal box, which isn't really what we do here. We just use the bag, that, you know, the soft bag that it comes in, and hang that on the back of the wheelchair. Doug likes to go out with his wife to food festivals, nightclubs. It can be the arm of the straw can be mounted onto commode chair, shower chair, hospital bed. Here's Doug. He got a peg, even though the SIP mouthpiece helped him swallow for so long, and he could eat normally. Late last year, he was having too many penetrations and aspirations, so he finally got a peg put in, and he's fed through his tummy, but he can still also eat by mouth. We're recommending that blood draws happen with ultrasound, because it's very difficult to get blood, but this can be braced to the bed anywhere. Doug likes to study still to keep his license for being a marriage celebrant, and so his SIP mouthpiece helps him not only to speak louder, but to be able to keep up his qualification and keep being able to do this service for friends and family. Here's Martin. He's the son of the president of the Czech Republic Parent Project, and he likes to go cycling with his mum, and he puts his ventilator between his legs, and he's able to see the countryside by bicycle with his mother. Doug, as I said, he likes to shout and go to the football. His wife's very amused by this, and he can tell the referees where they're going wrong, and swear at the players why they're not playing better, and that's one of his biggest enjoyments, as well as acting, dressing up, parties. And here's another fact sheet I created because Michelle gave us some good recommendations about using our ventilators on aeroplanes, because we all desaturate on airplanes. So I hope you check out that fact sheet. And here's my family now. Thanks to non-invasive ventilation, it's bigger. So my sons have partners, and children, and of course Doug has Lauren now. And that's been one of the high points of his life. So to summarize, I've got a slide here of some of the main benefits. Mainly this 10 to 15 years on average longer to live, longevity, and you know, that's no small thing. That's why I love the title of your pilot project, because that's the potential you're losing, 1,500 years of life, if you don't follow this non-invasive ventilation journey, because the boys have more energy, they sleep better, their heart function improves. Doug experienced a 10% increase in heart function. He did experience 20 to 30% increase and sustained heart function all through his 20s from beta blockers, from cardiac medicine. So this extra 10%, it was noticeable. It helps you swallow. It gives you more ability to speak, participate, be confident, and have a better social life. There's another fact sheet that Michelle helped me with about swallowing and what the real problem is when you can't swallow anymore, and some tips about how to keep swallowing on that. Once again, I want to remind you of our accidents, that our hard lessons learned, and to be prepared, and to have early planning, a way where your son can call out to you in the night when his ventilator fails, backups, precautions. And as with this Pegaso, we're just learning about now and trying to introduce into all states. Keep up with the latest. And, you know, we're hoping that the IPV cough assist machine will bring lots of our adults back from the brink when their pneumonia is too severe, when the cough assist machine becomes ineffective. We still want another tool to maybe help them and bring them back from the brink to get over their pneumonia instead of losing them. And my last slide finally is probably the biggest reason for this NIV journey, and that's so that our sons become men, so they achieve their opus, so they achieve their life's purpose, like all of us, most of us have a chance to do, to have a passion in life and follow that dream, give back to the community, leave a legacy behind us, because life is so short, the blink of an eye for most people. And our boys defeat Dushenn by achieving their opus. And I don't think Savant, in passing away in 2019, was defeated by Dushenn because he became a doctor of biomedicine, with some substantial work and findings about heat shock protein in Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And it's the same with Doug. Quite a different path in life. He actually became a stage actor. He was paid for rehearsals and paid for 2 seasons of 2 different plays. And one of them I put on YouTube. But, you know, it was the height of his ambition to achieve this opus, to be a fully paid actor and be good and for people to applaud his performance. So I'll leave it with you there. You know, of course, finding romance and a wife was probably also an opus of Douglas's. But as I said, this saving of this lost potential and, you know, 1,500 years extra life and achievements and participation in society is a really great thing to aim for. And I applaud you guys in Ukraine for doing that. Thank you for that.
Дякую за відео. У нас 3 дня поспіль погіршились погодні умови в Кропивницькому.
Thank you, Deb Robins. For 3 days we have been having the very severe weather conditions.
Ми сьогодні маємо великий вітер і багато сніга, і у нас періодично тут в обласній лікарні, де ми знаходимося у Кропивницькому, вимикається світло.
A strong wind is blowing and we are having a heavy snowfall, and from time to time we have problems with electricity supply here at the regional hospital hall because of it.
Тому ми черговий раз вибачаємось за те, що в нас технічні неполадки сьогодні.
So we apologize for technical issues which we are having today.
Але це форс-мажорні обставини.
These are force majeure things.
Ми вітаємо Деб Робінс і Давид Петрасека.
We greet Deb Robins and David Petrasek.
Ми просимо до дискусії задавати питання та надати відповідь. Давид Петрасек є членом пацієнтської організації Дюшенн з Чеської Республіки.
We are asking you to start the discussion, to ask and answer the questions. David Petrasek is a member of Patients Organization and Dushenn from Czech Republic.
Як я вже сказала, Давид Петрасек неодноразово приймав участь у нашій конференції, ну, в принципі, як і Деб Робінс.
As I already said, David several times participated at our conferences, as well as Deb, I'm sorry.
До речі, Деб Робінс у своїй промові розповідала про доктора Дюшенна, який допоміг, навчав застосовувати дихальні апарати для пацієнтів з Дюшенна.
And during your lecture, you mentioned a lot of times Dr. Dushenn, who was training to use the ventilation equipment.
Я хочу сказати, що саме мати Давида Петрасека, Павліна Голубовська, познайомила мене з доктором Дюшенном, який допоміг і нашим дітям в Україні.
And the mother of David, Paulina, she introduced Margarita to Dr. Dюшенн, who also helped with the ventilation equipment, the children here in Ukraine.
А зараз я прошу Девіда поспілкуватись і задати питання.
David, please, do you have any questions to Deb?
Yes, hello everybody. Thanks for invitation. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Доброго дня. Дякую за те, що запросили мене на конференцію.
Okay, so the first question to Deb is, how is your health system prepared if somebody's home ventilator fails? Is there any emergency line anyone can call that is available 24 hours per day?
Питання таке, чи готова система охорони здоров'я до того випадку, коли виникає неможливість у використанні вентиляційного апарату, чи з різних причин, чи є якась служба доступна 24 години на добу, щоб у випадку необхідності можна було вирішити цю проблему?
Yes, David, yes. One of the things Michelle tells us to put in our ventilator bag is our doctor's contact number, the sleep unit, the pulmonologist's contact number. But we're also instructed to, if we want to, have our own generator, or hospitals have their own generators, so we can use an amber bag perhaps and make our way to the local hospital, which will have emergency power as well. Most boys tend to have 2 different ventilators. So, you know, if one fails, they have a second ventilator, but not everybody.
Вирішення цієї проблеми у нас таке. По-перше, як нам доктор Дюшенн рекомендував, є спеціальна кнопка в ліжку, за якою можна зв'язатися, наприклад, з пульмонологом. Крім того, можна мати запасний генератор як вдома, так і в лікарні. Ну і деякі хлопчики мають 2 вентилятори. Якщо щось трапляється з одним вентилятором, можна використати інший вентилятор, але це не у всіх дітей.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, how many times is each boy's ventilator settings being checked each year? And do you have ventilation centers, or is the ventilation care provided just during each sleep laboratory's visit?
Питання полягає в тому, скільки разів на рік перевіряється налаштування вентилятора. І чи перевіряються вони лише, чи перевіряється це лише, коли дитина спить?
Thanks, David. Yes, every year or two there's a sleep study, and it's usually a full sleep study. And, you know, perhaps we're a bit behind Europe in that because, you know, you have in some countries very technical sensors and less invasive sleep studies that can be done. But numerous times through the year, there is a telephone clinic, and you'll be called up and that you'll be asked questions about your symptoms, and your ventilator numbers will be checked, and you'll have to supply your hours of operation of your ventilator, and they will analyze the data from your ventilator. So probably, you know, an annual or every 2 years a sleep study, and probably 3 or 4 times a year you'll have a telephone consultation.
Відповідь на це питання така. Кожні 2 роки апарат перевіряється під час сну, повного сну. Це обов'язково, а також 3-4 рази протягом року надсилаються у клініку дані із апарата, і вони їх аналізують і перевіряють функціональність обладнання.
Okay, and the last question we have is, are there any field services aimed on home rehabilitation, and also that will also include respiratory rehabilitation?
Питання полягає в тому, чи є якісь послуги щодо респіраторної реабілітації, і як взагалі вона проводиться?
I'm sorry, David, I don't quite get your meaning. Can you rephrase what you're asking?
Вибачте, Девід, я не зовсім зрозуміла питання. Будь ласка, перефразуйте його.
If there are any field services, you probably don't understand the term field service, right?
Можливо, не зрозумілий для вас термін field service.
You mean outreach? Yes, outreach. Yeah. Pediatric wise, yes, because therapists will use what you call it, you blow bubbles into a computer and your lung function is measured. You know, these lung function vital capacity, forced vital capacity tests. They will come to your house with a laptop and they'll do that on children. We don't tend to have very advanced checking services for adults. We don't have good outreach services for adults. So the adults tend to make do with telephone consultations, whereas, you know, with children, they'll be seen much more frequently and be taught to do exercises and have their forced vital capacity tested. So yeah, we're not caught up with adult care as well as some countries.
Я зрозуміла, можливо, ви маєте на увазі повітряний міст, то відповідь на ваше питання таке, що стосується дітей, пацієнтів, то тут працює педіатр, і навіть щодо дітей педіатр і команда необхідний медичний персонал приїжджають із обладнанням до дитини додому і перевіряють, роблять тести на легеневу функціональність, роблять рекомендації, якими вправами потрібно займатися, але що стосується дорослих пацієнтів, то тут не зовсім у нас добре, тому що в основному дорослі пацієнти отримують консультації телефоном.
Yeah, thank you, Deb Robins. That's all from us. Thank you.
Дякую, Деб Робінс. Це з нашого боку.
Thank you for letting me share our story and all the best of luck to you and your boys.
Дякую і вам, і удачі вашим хлопчикам.
Дякую, Давид Петрасек, за запитання. Деб, скажіть, будь ласка, є у вас спеціалізовані центри по лікуванню пацієнтів з Дюшенна?
Thank you, Petrasek, for the questions. And Deb, I've got a question to you. If there are any specialized centers in your country dealing with Duchenne patients?
Yes, the capital cities usually have a clinic. It's usually a pediatric clinic. And as I said, you know, we really need to get better at not having adults slip through the cracks and, you know, seeing adults and taking care of adults in a more coordinated way.
Так, у нас є центри, як зазвичай вони розташовані у столицях, але в основному ці центри функціонують як педіатричні центри. Тому для нас існує проблема, як в даному випадку поступати із дорослими пацієнтами. Ми над цим працюємо, але проблема залишається.
Скажіть, будь ласка, у вас в вашій лекції ви розповідали про те, що головним залишається це розповідати про обмін досвідом одних батьків і інших. Тобто ви розповідали про досвід, про використання батарей. Тобто у когось є запасні батареї, у когось є запасні апарати, а інші цього не мали. Але аби доктори розповіли про це, то менше було б проблем. Скажіть, будь ласка, як вирішується зараз інформаційне питання обміну досвідом?
During your lecture, you accented on the topic of information, providing information. And you mentioned how parents collaborate with each other. The example was extra battery. Some families do have extra batteries, some don't. They share information, they share necessary things. So the question is, how do you manage? What do you do for the encouraging people to share the information concerning this topic?
Well, I'm kind of retired now from an official role in a charity, but we belong to Facebook groups and we contribute. We have a national Facebook group, but usually there are hundreds of answers to questions for people. And we do share, we private message those people we know that have experience, or we reach out by private message, but we do contribute to those international and national Facebook groups, with as much knowledge as we can. We never give medical advice. We might say, well, this is what happened for us. Or we might say, this is a good question to ask your doctor, because a parent should never give medical advice to another parent. Because you don't know all the details. So we just give each other good questions to ask.
По-перше, я б хотіла сказати, що у нас працюють благодійні організації, а також ми дуже активно працюємо у Фейсбуці. У нас є група в Фейсбуці національна і міжнародна, і там дуже багато людей задають питання. Крім того, ми надсилаємо приватні повідомлення, якщо виникають у сімей такі питання. Але я б хотіла зазначити, що ця інформація ніякому випадку не має бути медичною, тому що одні батьки не можуть давати будь-яку медичну інформацію або коментар іншим батькам.
Скажіть, будь ласка, ми знаємо про те, що у 70% мам, які мають дітей з хворобою Дюшенна, вони є носіями мутованого гену. Чи проводиться у вас в державі діагностика стосовно потенційного насильства таких мам? І чи якось спостерігається запобігання народженню таких дітей?
It is known that 70% of cases of Duchenne cases is because of the mutation of the gene of the mom's gene. So the question is, are there any measures to diagnose, to follow this gene? Are there any examinations that women have to know that they may be having this gene, mutated gene? And are there any preventive measures conducting in Australia concerning preventive measures concerning the birth of these children?
No, not really. I think the spontaneous mutation rate is very high. I think daughters of known carriers will have a genetic test and find out if they're a carrier in a lot of cases. There's also amniocentesis, I guess, if you're afraid of being a carrier. But we don't have a newborn screening program, fully fledged across the country yet. No.
Ні, по-перше, проводиться тест на цей ген, але не потрібно забувати про спонтанну мутацію гену. І деякі, якщо жінка побоюється про те, що вона може бути носієм цього гену, вона може зробити генний аналіз. Що стосується скринінгу народжених немовлят, новонароджених, то це в нас не дуже поширено по всій країні.
Мене якраз цікавило питання стосовно тесту для мами або для сестри такого пацієнта з Дюшенн. Чи це за рахунок, чи це влада оплачує, чи це родина сама оплачує за тест ДНК?
I'm especially interested in the DNA test for a mom and for a sister. Is it free of charge because the government pays for this, or the fee should be paid by the family?
Yes, our government system has genetic counselors, and as a girl approaches reproductive age, usually, you know, they will opt to have a test. You know, their parents can't make them. It's something they decide to do with the genetic counselor to find out. And yes, I believe it is, you know, the cost is borne by the government, yes.
Так, у нас є урядові ради, які займаються цим питанням, і коли дівчинка досягає репродуктивного віку, вона може пройти, звичайно, батьки цьому сприяють, вона може пройти цей тест, і який оплачується урядом.
Скажіть, будь ласка, яке коло друзів вашого сина? Чи він спілкується більше зі своїми однолітками? Чи він спілкується з такими ж дітьми, які теж мають хворобу Дюшенна? Чи в нього створено якесь своє коло друзів?
The next question is about the circle of friends of your son. Whom does he prefer to communicate with? The friends, the just usual friends, ordinary friends, or his friends are children with Duchenne disease, or maybe he prefers to group his friends, to choose his friends himself?
I think adults become quite isolated as they deteriorate, and their friends get jobs, have relationships, and I think, you know, in Doug's 20s, he would go out himself at night to meet new friends. You know, usually he started having school friends, but then friends became in his interest groups, his amateur acting friends. He does communicate with other young men with Duchenne, but they live so far away that, you know, he just involves himself in the arts community locally, really, and they're his main friends.
Що стосується ДАКа, розумієте, дорослі люди, вони дорослі пацієнти, вони стають більш ізольованими через те, що люди їхнього віку заводять, ну, мають якісь відносини, навчаються, тобто вони мають свої інтереси. Тому, коли ДАК досяг 20-річного віку, у нас була невеличка з цим проблема, і він сам шукав собі друзів. Звичайно, це були друзі в школі. Крім того, у нього є друзі, які також хворіють на хворобу Дюшенна, але, на жаль, вони знаходяться в інших містах, далеко від нас. Крім того, коли він грав, в нього є друзі із аматорського театру, в якому він грає.
And he shares his wife's friends and family now too. So his circle has grown.
Тобто він сам розширює свій круг спілкування.
Добре, дякую. Дякую вам за ваш досвід, дякую за те, що погодились ним поділитись. І я сподіваюся, що ми ще будемо зустрічатись на наступних наших конференціях.
Thank you very much for having shared your experience with us, and hopefully we will meet during our next conferences.